I didn't quite get to go to as many games as I would have liked to this year. But that being said, there are a lot of big races going on as the season wraps up. Nothing that is too surprising. Mostly wild card matchups that are really interesting. The Yankees and Orioles, which when we have covered baseball this season has been sort of the main division race that we've talked about, seems to have pretty much been ended. At the moment, the Yankees have clinched the playoffs. They've clinched a wild card berth. They're up, I believe, 4 games on the Orioles this season, but there are enough games where if the Yankees lost every game for the rest of the season, then the Orioles could jump them. But at this point, it looks like the Yankees have wrapped up the AL East. Now, the only other team to this point to clinch the playoffs are the Brewers, who clinched their division this last week with a record of 88-64. Now, the matchup that I'm most interested in seeing play out, and I'm sure most of the listeners to this are as well, is the Braves are only 2 games out of wild card contention from the Mets. So they actually play the Mets in a 3-game series at home next week. So this will be huge in determining whether or not the Braves make the playoffs. The Mets have a tough series that starts against the Phillies right now. The Braves play the Marlins. So this should be a really good opportunity for the Braves to get some wins under their belts while the Mets end up hopefully taking some losses in this series against the Phillies. I mean, the Phillies are the #1 team in the National League. They're the best team in baseball. They beat the Phillies tonight 10-6, which isn't what I was hoping to see. But they still have 2 more to go. Hopefully the Phillies can pull it out. Brandon Nimmo on the Mets hit a 2-run homer. I I don't know. I was really hoping the Phillies could sweep the Mets. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. But I mean, if the Braves can do a good number and win the series against the Mets, that bodes really well for them. The Braves won 15-3 against the Reds, so it's not like the Mets beating the Phillies puts the game back any or puts the Braves back any. And the Marlins are one of the worst teams in baseball, so I expect the Braves to do well against them and maybe slide in there in the wild card. I mean, the Braves aren't playoff favorites, but still, you always love to see the home team make the playoffs as opposed to going home in September. Now, early on in the season, before it even started, me and Levi both said that the best way for Shohei Ohtani to get people to quit talking about the gambling scandal that he found himself wrapped up in at the start of the season was to play baseball at the elite level that he usually does. And that's pretty much what he did this season. So him and Aaron Judge are the 2 MVP favorites. And Shohei Ohtani made history today, becoming the first player ever to win or to get 50 home runs and 50 stolen bases in the same season, while the Dodgers absolutely whooped up on the Marlins tonight. So going into the game, he was missing 2 home runs and 1 stolen base. So, I mean, Shohei just had an insane performance tonight against the Marlins, who, as I was just saying, was bottom feeder. He hit 3 home runs in that game, which is crazy. He had 6 at bats, 10 RBIs. I mean, he was already blowing people's minds just with how well he's been a dual threat on the bases and hitting the ball this season. This is just more of the same. And performances like that have put the gambling scandal way out of people's minds. I mean, the Dodgers are the one of the best teams in baseball. For my bet, the World Series is going to come down to the Phillies, the Dodgers, and the Yankees. Uh, I would take the Dodgers over the Phillies right now, just because the Phillies have barely scraped over 500 since the All-Star break. They really were hot at the first half of the season, haven't been able to carry the momentum forward so far, but they still have great talent. Bryce Harper's still Bryce Harper, so you can't count them out. But Freddie and Shohei, the Dodgers, they've got a huge advantage going into this playoffs. And at 91 wins, at the moment, I believe they're the best record in baseball, which is, on the flip side, I've been talking about Shohei Ohtani making history. The White Sox are most likely going to make history this season, too, for all the wrong reasons. The White Sox are currently sitting at 117 losses right now, which, if they continue at their current clip, they will set since 1900 for the most losses in a single MLB season. So the current record is 123, I believe. The all-time record, like pre 1900, is 134 from the 1899 Cleveland Spiders. So I remember whenever the Cleveland Indians announced they were going to change their name, before they had announced they were going to be the Guardians, a lot of people were saying they should bring back the Spiders, just because that was an old iconic team name from way back in the day. Well, if you ever wonder why they didn't bring back the name the Cleveland Spiders, it's because the Cleveland Spiders weren't exactly setting the world on fire back when they were around. 134 losses is crazy. Now, the Spiders' greatest player was Cy Young, but I don't want to lump Cy Young in with that pitiful 1899 team, because that was the season after Cy Young left the team. So, if you ever wonder just how good was that Cy Young guy that they named the awards after, the year after he left, his team set the all-time loss record. So, take that with what you will. So, I believe in the White Sox. I think they can set this record and go home with a little piece of history. Now, speaking of Cy Young, Tarek Screwball and Chris Sale are the favorites for the American and National League Cy Young Awards, and I don't know, maybe my diagnosis of Cy Young leaving being the problem wasn't accurate, because Tarek Screwball is proof that a great pitcher cannot carry a great team to success. Despite his great performance this year, he's got like a 17-4 win-loss record, 2.69 ERA, something along those lines. His Tigers are fourth in the American League Central. And baseball, it's one of those situations where there are so many players and so many different factors going on in baseball. That's not like basketball, where you can really blame one individual for a team's success or lack thereof. It's a much more team-oriented game, obviously. So, being a great player on a poor team, you get something like a Mike Trout situation. You hate to see it, and it's happening right now with the Cy Young caliber pitcher. Chris Sale on the Braves, he will probably win the National League Cy Young, but he hasn't been doing so hot this last month. His ERA for the month is 1 run higher than his average. He's at 3.69 for the month of September. But hopefully, like I said, with the Braves playing the Marlins coming up, and in a little wild card race with the Mets, he can zone in, finish strong, and come out with some hardware. Now, I had this in my notes, and I kind of skipped over it because the conversation took me on a different path, but I do want to go back to Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge for a little bit and just say that of the two, Aaron Judge has had the better season, and I would say he's had the best season in baseball. Aaron Judge has the edge over Shohei in every major statistical category except for stolen bases. He's got a .321 ERA versus Shohei batting .287. He's got 171 hits to Shohei's 170. This was before the game tonight, so a little bit of adjustments need to be made. He's at 136 RBIs and Shohei's at 120. He's got 53 home runs. Shohei's at 51. And, I mean, stolen bases, Shohei is just blowing out of the water. Shohei's at 50, and Aaron Judge is at 9. I think the MLB widening the bases or like enlarging the bases has been great for stolen base numbers going up because that was becoming to be a lost art. And base stealing is one of the fun things of baseball. It just adds an element of unpredictability to it. So I love that those numbers are back. I mean, players like Ricky Henderson were able to make a name for themselves and become beloved, mostly off of their base stealing ability. So for that to make a comeback, I'm all for it. I know I'm generally a traditionalist when it comes to sports, and especially baseball, when the game has just been relatively the same since at least the 60s, arguably longer. I mean, there hasn't been too many major changes to baseball, honestly, since they got rid of the dead ball in the early 20s. But the pitch clock, the enlarging the bases, I think they've all been good for making the games more exciting. Now, I can't speak to whether or not they've affected viewership numbers. I think a lot of the fun themed games MLB has done, like the game in Birmingham this year, the Field of Dream games last year, and there was a League of Their Own game this year. Those have been fun, and those games draw viewers, but I don't know if the game becoming more exciting to watch has led to more viewership distributed across the season. But that's pretty much all of the MLB coverage I have at the moment. I'm really, said it before, going to finish off MLB coverage with this. Fingers crossed that the Braves can slip in on the Mets and make a wild card playoff spot. So, going over to the NFL, the Falcons and the Eagles had a great game on Monday Night Football that went down to the wire. The Falcons ended up winning 22-21 and almost cost themselves the game. So the final minute and a half pretty much was very chaotic. So with a minute and 46 left, the game was 18-15 and Shaquan Barkley missed a crucial catch on third and third that would have sealed the game. I mean, if the Eagles get a first down there, then they can kill clock for the next minute and 46 seconds. And the Falcons don't get the ball back, or they get the ball back with very little time left. So the Eagles ended up having to settle for a field goal, which brought the total up to 21-15, so a 6-point lead over the Falcons. Well, with 20 seconds or 15 seconds or something like that left, Drake London ended up getting a huge touchdown catch for the Falcons, and he celebrated by doing the machine gun celebration, which I don't know if that celebration itself is outlawed. I think that's the case. But whatever reason, he got a unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, and I think it was 15 yards. So that touchdown tied the game. The Falcons needed to kick the extra point in to win, and he got the kick sent back 15 yards. Now, the kick went in. The Falcons won 22-21, so everything was okay in the end. But that would have been a massive unforced error that just would have been brutal for the Falcons to start their season 0-2, and especially to have the second loss come that way. Drake London apologized after the game and said he was careless for doing that celebration. And this is just my own personal note here. I had never seen that celebration before, but I saw an Alabama player do it on Saturday when Alabama whooped up on Wisconsin. I don't really have a whole lot to say about that, other than Alabama was firing on all cylinders, unlike last week against South Florida. And that's the Alabama I hope to see against UGA here next weekend. and UGA almost got upset by Kentucky. They warded it off, but for a brief second, I thought that UGA might drop drastically in the rankings. They dropped down 1 point, and Texas is now the number one team in the AP poll. But they escaped getting upset by the hair of their chin. And I mean, that might be really good for the caliber of the game next weekend, Alabama UGA, because both teams have almost been upset by teams that are way below their level with South Florida and Kentucky, respectively. So they should both be jolted and wide awake and on their best behavior. Anyways, but I saw an Alabama defender do the machine gun celebration after sacking Wisconsin's quarterback, I believe. And then I saw Drake London do it, and I was like, oh, I guess that's a thing now. But then I saw the flag get thrown, and there wasn't a flag when Alabama did it, so I guess that celebration is only illegal in the NFL. Either that or the refs just didn't notice when Alabama's player did it, but just a minor point of observation there that I noticed watching both games. For his part, Shaquan Barkley apologized after the game for missing the catch that could have won. He took responsibility, said he let his team down. I mean, I don't know. It happens to the best of people. I mean, you hate to see somebody beat themselves up over a mistake like that. I mean, everybody's human. Can't catch them all, as they say. But it is good that, you take ownership. Don't try to deflect blame onto others and move on. Hopefully he can pick himself back up and play well next game and put that miscatch behind him. Now, Kirk Cousins has a really good game, especially when you compare him to the opener that he had against the Steelers. His QBR actually doubled between the two games, and I hope he can continue that level of improvement into this weekend because the Falcons play the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are ripe for getting an upset. They have not looked like their dominant selves so far this season. I don't know if it's championship hangover or if all these long playoff runs over the last 6 or so years have them beat up or what, but they have just looked vulnerable. They escaped the Ravens by a toe on opening day. They only beat the Bengals by 1 point this last weekend, 26-25, and Patrick Mahomes got thoroughly outplayed by Joe Burrow. Mahomes threw 2 interceptions in that game. As I mentioned, he's my fantasy quarterback, so that broke my heart to see. Only got me 14 points. So I hope Patrick Mahomes plays well and gets me some fantasy points, and I hope the Chiefs lose against the Falcons. But I don't know what's wrong with the Chiefs. I mean, they've been in the news for a bunch of non-football related reasons with all like the Taylor Swift, Brittany Mahomes stuff. I don't know if all that's starting to affect team morale in the locker room or if they're just tired and championship hangover, like I said. But whatever it is, they've been teetering, and I think they're about to slip up. Somebody's going to beat them in the near future, and hopefully it can be the Falcons. I wouldn't put money on it, but hey, a man can hope. Now, Bryce Young has gotten benched by the Carolina Panthers. That's been pretty much the biggest NFL news story the last 2 days. He said he wasn't expecting it, but that he respected his coach's decision and that it was up to him to work harder to prove himself and make the adjustments that help get the Panthers into winning shape. Pretty much said the same thing about Shaquan Barkley, but it's good to see him taking responsibility, and I hope that he can put in that work and really prove himself and get a starting spot back, because that's the curse of being the number one draft pick, is you're talented, but you come in and your team is not talented at all. That's how they got the number one draft pick usually. And you get a weird situation sometimes where the Lakers with Kareem get to draft Magic Johnson because they made some good trades and got the pick. But for the most part, the first team drafting is pretty awful. And the Panthers last year were 2-15. and they're off to an 0-2 start this year. So it looks like it's going to be more of the same. They got whooped 47-10 opening night against the Saints, and they lost 26-3 against the Chargers last weekend, which is what finally got Bryce Young benched. He's thrown 10 interceptions and had 11 fumbles. And, I mean, his completion percentage is 59%. So whenever he gets the ball out, it's looking like he's doing a relatively good job of hitting his passes. I mean, Aaron Rodgers' completion percentage is 65%. But it looks like interceptions and fumbles have just not been going his way. And I mean, you can say it's because he has a bad O line, but 10 and 11, like that's a lot. And if you want to put 5 of them each on the line, that's one thing. But at a certain point, you gotta make accurate passes and hang on to the football. I mean, that's not me giving some deep cut scientific football knowledge here. It's common sense, but it's also common sense that if you don't do those things, you're gonna get benched. So when he says he wasn't expecting it, I mean, obviously you don't want to have that mentality of every time you make a mistake, oh my gosh, is this going to be the thing that gets me pulled? I remember being a pitcher, and it was always stressful, at least to me, whenever you're having a tough game and you never know, like, is this the walk that's going to get me pulled? And so I get that mindset, and like you don't want to think that way, but you also it's important after games to be self-reflective and be like, okay, 10 interceptions, or like 11 fumbles in 2 games. Like, yeah, I'm probably not going to make it too much longer. Andy Dalton is taking his place, who, I mean, he hasn't started in almost 2 years, but he is a former Pro Bowler. So when you have somebody like that, I mean, Andy Dalton's like 36. So he's a little bit on the older side, but still, when you have a veteran QB behind you and you're struggling, might probably need to be looking over your shoulder. So Aaron Rodgers has been getting better every game this season. As I'm sitting here recording this, the Jets are whooping up on the Patriots 24-3. The game just wrapped up like 5 minutes ago. And Aaron Rodgers, I mentioned after the opening game against the 49ers that he played okay, but that he wasn't fully himself. They did a lot of running plays. But every game since then, he has gotten to look more and more like the Aaron Rodgers of old. His amount of passes that he's thrown has gone up every single game. So in that game I was talking about against the 49ers, he made 21 passes. He made 30 last week. He made 35 this week. They did really well last week against, let me look up who they played really quickly, but I mean, it was a pretty good win from what I remember reading, and like I said today, 24-3. So they beat the Titans 24-17 last week, and Aaron Rodgers, he's got a completion rate of 65%. He threw for like over 250 yards today. I mean, the Patriots aren't exactly world beaters, but still, for somebody of Aaron Rodgers' age, just coming off a serious Achilles injury, you really like to see him continually improving and getting back to looking like the Aaron Rodgers that's been setting the NFL on fire for the last 15 or so years. Now, in the college football world, there's really only 2 games this weekend that I think are worth mentioning. You've got Tennessee versus Oklahoma. Tennessee's number 6, Oklahoma's number 15. Then you've got USC and Michigan, and that is a matchup between 11 and 18. USC is 11, Michigan's 18. If Michigan loses this game, which I expect them to, they're probably going to fall out of the rankings, and that'll be a wrap on their season. Tennessee and Oklahoma, I mean, I'm betting on Tennessee, but you can never count out a team as good as Oklahoma. I mean, that's a historic program. Plus, they've got Texas coming up in the next couple of weeks. So they're going to want to start getting some momentum behind them to get ready for that big rivalry game. So that is football in a nutshell. The WWE Smackdown return to USA Network is in the books. And as I said, Roman Reigns did return with a bang against the Bloodline. Cody Rhodes and Solo Sikoa, they had their cage match. Cody actually won clean without help from Roman, which I really liked. Roman came out after the match and beat up Solo, but ended up getting in a position where the Bloodline had him outnumbered, and Cody Rhodes came back in and made the save with Roman. And now it looks like Roman and Cody will be teaming up against Solo Sikoa and presumably Jacob Fatu, but some other member of the Bloodline at Bad Blood here in a couple of weeks. So no Kevin Owens heel turn. I said that we would have one of the two, Roman returning or Kevin Owens turning heel on the show. We got the return. I kind of thought we might get both, but I knew for sure we would get one. And I was also mistaken in thinking that it was going to be Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes at Bad Blood. Now, I don't know why they're not going with that. It seemed like the way they ended that last match, that was the natural next step in that story. But instead, they threw a curveball at us. I was not expecting not only Cody Rhodes to be wrestling against the Bloodline at Bad Blood just because he's done that so much lately. I thought he was going to move on, but to be teaming with Roman Reigns, that's pretty big considering Cody and Roman have been on opposing sides of the good guy, bad guy divide for the last couple years now, particularly against each other. But hey, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and that can make for some strange bedfellows. Uh, Drew McIntyre and CM Punk are confirmed for a Hell in a Cell match at Bad Blood. That match should be vicious. CM Punk was out there on Raw Monday talking about he's going to make Drew McIntyre bleed, that he's willing to die in that cell if it means that he can take Drew McIntyre down. I mean, you can't have rhetoric like that leading up to the match and not have it be just a bloody brawl. So that's what I'm expecting. And if WWE doesn't deliver on those expectations that they set, I'll be greatly disappointed because this has been the most intense and personal feud that I've seen on WWE television in a while. And The Rock and Cody Rhodes, that got pretty tense there, but it really only lasted for like 3 weeks. Cody Rhodes or CM Punk and Drew McIntyre have been going at each other all year. I mean, in kayfabe, which is the wrestling lingo for in the wrestling fictional story universe, Drew McIntyre is the one that injured CM Punk and put him out of action for 6 months. I mean, CM Punk cost Drew the title twice. Drew McIntyre's hospitalized CM Punk twice. Drew McIntyre stole and then broke CM Punk's necklace that had his wife's name and his dog's name on it. So they better be bringing their A game. There needs to be weapons. There needs to be pandemonium all over Hell in a Cell in Atlanta. So I'm excited for this match. I can't wait to see what they bring out. But I'm also thinking that going back to Cody and Roman for a second, that the pairing of those two could sow some seeds of dissent between Cody and Kevin Owens and Randy Orton because Randy Orton and Kevin Owens have had their fair share of problems with the Bloodline for the last 3 or 4 years, really. I mean, in kayfabe, the Bloodline are the ones that broke Randy Orton's back and almost cost him his career. So that could be the thing that causes Randy and Kevin to turn against Cody as they see him making truce or making peace with Roman, and that drives a wedge between them. So that'll be interesting to see. Final topic I've got to get into for tonight is Canelo Alvarez defended his title this last weekend, and he came out on top. He drew $17 million in the fight, which is crazy. But from what I saw, a lot of people were criticizing Canelo's performance, particularly Terrence Crawford, who is still leveling for a match with Canelo. Oscar De La Hoya also criticized Canelo for it. So we'll see if any of that trash talk leads to anything, but I don't see it happening. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, Canelo just does not want to fight Terrence Crawford, and he's just going to stick to fighting relatively obscure figures to non-hardcore boxing fans, such as this Berlanga guy. The pay-per-view did over 650,000 buys, which is good, but not that great. I don't know. I mean, boxing needs a super fight soon just to get people excited, because I can't think of the last fight I was really that hyped up to watch. I guess it was Canelo versus Charlo, and that's been about a year. So I really hope that they can find somebody fun for Canelo to go after. I mean, we need a good heavyweight fight too, because I mean, I don't know when the last time Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder or anybody fought at least somebody of note, but we'll see. I mean, Anthony Joshua is fighting Daniel Dubois coming up soon, or maybe it's Dubois. Who knows? But I mean, that's not a super fight. I've said for the longest time that I want to see Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury. I don't think we're going to get either of those fights, but a man can dream. So who knows? Hopefully, sometime soon, one of those will come to fruition. I think Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder could be more fun than Joshua and Fury, but I don't know. Ever since Deontay Wilder's undefeated record got busted by Tyson Fury, he just hasn't felt the same since. He's also 38 years old, so I mean his career is probably winding down, anyways. And he's lost his last two fights, so I don't know. Boxing, they need to do something to light a spark. Hopefully, they do it soon. But with that being said, y'all have a good evening. Go like us and follow and share and all that good stuff on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, buy our merch, and I will see y'all next time.